Diary of an Identity Theft Victim, part, I'm not quite sure, 15 approximately. It's been almost 6 months since my last update, and I feel compelled to just keep this video diary going and make a quick update because I had a quick search through today on YouTube and I can see that now, although there were other people making videos, and there's videos on almost every single subject on everything in every genre on YouTube, it seems to have become quite a popular subject now. And there are videos that are even being produced by big authorities about identity theft and the implications. It's good to see that some attention has been given to this crime that has been for a long time overlooked and not fully, I think, analysed in terms of the implications of what can happen to someone once they've had their identity stolen or had ID documents stolen or copied or defrauded in some way or somehow. Somebody else has used their identity, and especially when they've been able to do that without trace. I saw something that reported that in the UK that there were 226, I think, thousand cases reported in the last year. However, let's just say this is 226,000, almost a quarter of a million cases reported. That doesn't mean that there was actually 2026 actual cases that occurred. That's what they have in terms of statistics, what was reported. And I just want to make it clear that identity theft is a crime that is not always easy to trace or to prove, because sometimes it doesn't occur in a sense where there is any physical evidence. If you know and you have a feeling because you see some clues that somebody else has taken your papers or copied your papers, or they've gone through your mail or your email has been hacked, your computer's been hacked. A lot of the time, these crimes are not physical, and therefore there will be no physical evidence. We're living in a digital age, and I don't think I need to be the one to explain to people that there is a different type of crime that is committed now. And oftentimes these crimes that are taking place in the digital format, there's virtual and all kinds of formats, and people are taking advantage of that space. It's a great place to, the digital landscape is a great place to do lots of creative things and business and e-commerce, but there are also the dangers that come with that, and the legal system has not upgraded and updated as yet, although I'm sure that they are trying their best to cope with changing things in the framework so that they will logistically be able to tackle. But people's mindset hasn't changed, that people are still very much into the physical and what they can prove. And proof is something that requires evidence, and usually evidence is focused around physical evidence. Finding digital evidence, finding people who are adept at fraud and hacking to leave a digital footprint. I don't know enough to be able to really go into details about that, but I know that it can be very difficult to find enough evidence of cyber crimes. And so a lot of ID theft starts in that realm of cybercrime. And so it will be very hard to prove and very hard to come up with evidence. And in order to report a crime and to be taken seriously, as I know from past experience, you have to have some physical evidence that something has been taken. And this is why identity theft has been so difficult to tackle. So that being said, I just wanted to kind of make this quick update. I'm trying to be as brief as possible because some of my more recent videos, especially where I have a bit more resources in terms of the phone or the device that I'm using, I was very limited when I first started the video diary series, and I was having technical problems with my iPhone. And I don't think it was a coincidence that the minutes at one stage were getting shorter and shorter until the videos were actually less than a minute long. And I was just trying to keep going because I felt that it was necessary for me to record this diary to give me some evidence of what I was going through, and to also help me to cope with the situation by feeling like I'm at least trying to do something proactive and something productive during that downtime. But, I will say for the record, because people tend to judge things by that same physical mindset, that although my face has filled out a bit now and I've managed to move forward, and I may not be as frantic some days, that although I may look like I physically improved, I'm still suffering very much because of the consequences of what occurred in terms of the experience that I went through. And anxiety is something that sometimes when you go through traumatic experiences, you have to live with that. It's not something easy to get over. When I'm very anxious about people stealing from me, and almost, completely paranoid about being having my things stolen, to the point where I am still not comfortable with leaving paperwork and things, and unless they're locked away securely. I'm not comfortable at all with anyone asking me to verify my identity by giving them copies of my documents. And I limit it to, one piece of ID alone. I do not give out and I would not advise anyone to give out passport numbers to people unless you're traveling on a plane and you have, absolutely no choice. You're at the airport, or, even in hotels and places like hospitality, some of them are not properly managed and they're not compliant legally. So do be very careful with giving out your personal information, and try to limit those things as much as possible. That would be my best advice. I also want to state for the record on this video that I personally have been punished, and I know that I have been punished. I have suffered severely, not only due to the consequences of what happens when you have your ID taken by someone who's probably in a position to have more resources to defend themselves and to defend their so-called right to use your ID, and maybe they have access to more support, whether legally or just people supporting them, and they might be able to buy support, and almost everything can be bought nowadays. So, you know there's all kinds of things that can occur, and your whole social status and your social circles can be completely broken down by someone if they're really determined enough to try to take away your life and live in your lifeline. It's a very serious. It's not just about identity theft and taking someone's paperwork. When someone tries to life hack you and life jack you and get into your life and get into every detail of your life, it's a very, not just uncomfortable, it's a very painful experience. So I just want to state on this update of Identity Theft Survivor that yes, I've survived, but I'm still suffering as a consequence of what has been done, because I have been punished for complaining. And that's not something that is, unique to this particular crime. Oftentimes, when we complain and try to stand up for our rights in life, we will come up against a lot of resistance from people who are not willing to really look into the situation or the details, because it's a problem and an issue that they don't want to deal with. And I can relate to that, because I have a lot of issues that I need to deal with in my everyday life. And this is an extra issue. There's other things that come up, and they come up almost every day, especially in a city, a very stressful city like London. Problems come up every day, and we have to be very, have our wits about us and be very proactive, and responsive in a way that is pragmatic and practical, but also assertive enough to not just be bulldozed over by other people who feel like they have that power, that support in their favor, that they can buy things, they have more buy-in power. And there's a lot of that going on with people who have more buy-in power, thinking that they can just buy out your rights to have your own life, to have your own rights. And this is where I have been punished severely for complaining and for making these videos. I have been punished by people who would rather not know the truth, would rather not hear about this problem, would rather not have to think about it, would rather not have to analyze, would rather not have to actually think about the laws needing to be changed, would rather not think about those things that they haven't thought about, that need to be attended to, because again, we all have stress, we all have burdens, we all have a workload. Would rather have the perspective that I am trying to seek sympathy from them or compassion, or I'm trying to offload my problem onto them, or I'm expecting for them to do something. By speaking about this, they now feel that that I'm trying to obligate them to do something about this. But what I would like, of course, like anyone who has been a victim of this crime, is for the system that is in place, systemically, the things that need to be changed so that not just my ID, your ID, our ID, our personal information that is confidential, that is very crucial to us, is properly secured in a way that we discourage people sharing people's information in a manner that would leave them open to these type of threats. And I had a conversation. I'm very pleased with myself for being proactive and having a conversation with a well-known social media channel platform about the process of verification and how they go about verifying people's identity to check that they are authentic. Because it's so simple to use a bank card for that process. And I have been through an experience recently with relation to medical services where you go into a medical service place and they want to just run your card just to check and verify that you have a payment card that is accepted, and they don't charge it, but they just run the card. And that's something that is not just used in medical facilities, it's used in financial institutions and other institutions to verify. So why is it that we can't across the board have a standardized method of verifying people's identity by using their bank account information, which is according to the protocol, and it's very strict protocol. This bank card information is kept very securely and encrypted. Whereas when you take a copy of someone's driving license or birth certificate or whichever paper, birth certificate is not is a public document that is available to search on public registers anyway. But if you take a copy of someone's ID, there is not really a proper way, especially if it's photocopied and filed on in a paper format. There is no way to encrypt that. It's too insecure, and there will never be any guarantee that you cannot, that you can assure somebody that there won't be breaches of that security of that information, especially when there's what they call human contact. There will be leakage, and there are people who are not completely honest. And we know that we're living in 2025 and the laws are still based on a time when they assumed that the reasonable man, you know, ruled, that people were reasonable and that they're honest. We know we're living in a time where, let's face it, I don't want to, make any analysis of the exact stats, but there isn't so many honest and reasonable people as there were the turn of the century, 100 years ago, or however long, when these laws were first written. It was a very different time, and we're living in a very different time where it's so much harder to find people because there's so much more numbers of people, and it's so much easier for people to hide. So me presenting myself and complaining, and fighting for my rights to actually have my own life and live and have my rights afforded to me, I if I didn't do that, I would be stupid. I would be giving my life away. And it is a real shame that people see complaining as a problem rather than an opportunity to fix something, to see that there is a solution that needs to be found. And we won't find a solution if we want to stay in denial and deny that there is a problem. We won't find a solution if we continue to be lazy, even mentally lazy, and not want to think about things too much, because we'd rather stay in a delusional state of mind where we think that everything is okay until it happens to us. And this is what happens with a lot of people. They don't see the problem until it happens to them, or it happens to someone close enough to them for it to affect them personally. And then when something happens to them, now they are the ones that want all of this attention because they feel that they're deserving of that much attention, because they're so much more important, superior to the average person. A lot of people in this world are not only living in a deluded state, but they're also living in a state where they're really not concerned about what goes on in the greater scheme of things. They're not interested in the greater good. They're not interested because we have been taught to be so individual minded that we should only be concerned about ourselves and what we're doing. And then on the other hand, there's also a lot of pointing fingers and blame and gaslighting and blame shifting going on right now, where people are looking for someone to blame for everything and constantly looking outside of themselves and not really. So it's like a contradiction. They're not really looking into themselves to see, well, what can I do? As I can't remember who it was, a great person had said, ask yourself, not what can my country do for me, what can I do for my country? What can you do to improve things for your country, for your community, for the situation, not just for yourself and your family, for people around you? Well, if you don't complain when there's a problem, if you stay silent, remember Martin Luther King said that that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. The fact is that if I do not complain, if I do not make these videos, if I do not try to make an effort to vocalize what is going on, then I will have failed myself and I will have failed you too. So if you're not interested in the reality of the problems that we are facing in this society with law enforcement when it comes to the type of crimes and the type of criminals that we're dealing with nowadays, that's your choice. But you may well be interested later on. And then you may want everybody's attention, and all of a sudden it's important to you. And maybe there are many people that won't tell you the truth, like Miss May. But I will tell you that you need to be concerned about things that are a problem in this world before they become a problem to you, and everybody realizes that you're just all about yourself. I am someone who is known to be very vocal, but I don't talk about things that are ideas that are just completely selfish and that are only going to improve my life. I talk about things that are for the greater good. And if you're not interested, you have a choice. You don't need to listen. You can turn over. But I am stating for the record, I have been punished for making these videos, for complaining about my identity being taken. And if I didn't complain, perhaps I wouldn't be here right now. If I didn't make these videos, perhaps I would not be alive right now. And that is the truth, whether you want to accept the truth or not. I will not stop speaking the truth. The fact is that we have a lot of problems that need attending to, and the longer we take to deal with the problem is the bigger the problem will get, and most people who are logical will realize that. There are many other instances where people get punished for complaining. In general, a lot of companies nowadays don't seem to encourage. They have a complaints policy. Every company is supposed to have a complaints policy and an escalation procedure. But when you ask them about it, most of the time, in some way or other, the way that the capitalist world has become is that we actually, a lot of the time, get penalized in some shape or form when we complain if we're not getting the service that we have paid for, even if it's the time that it takes to send emails back and forth and write letters if necessary and make phone calls all at our own expense, that's still being penalized because we shouldn't have to be doing those jobs for the companies that should have been providing the service. We shouldn't have to be bridging that gap with them. We shouldn't have to be spending so much extra time dealing with these issues that are not our responsibility and not being paid for it. Because if you ever get a lawyer to try to write a letter for you, I can tell you how much I was quoted recently. It isn't a small thing. It's not a small feat to be asked to be constantly writing emails and writing letters and making phone calls. And I don't think most of you all who have heard about what I have been through, who have ever heard me speaking about it or ever taken the time to listen to this video or any other media that I have put out, I don't think you all realize how much I've actually contributed that cannot be accounted for. How much I've contributed to helping to change things already, to bring awareness of things into the public forum, to use my ability to edutain, which is educate and entertain people at the same time, inspiring people and sharing information and knowledge for free. I've done a lot of these things for free because I know it's also assisting me. And while I'm assisting myself, I'm trying to assist you and to assist the process, the greater good, to assist change, to be a catalyst for change and all of these things. I am still being punished to this day for being outspoken and for speaking about this problem and for complaining about things, because perhaps if it was up to some people, I should just be meek and stay silent and just allow them to just shove me right down into a hole until I can no longer have air to breathe. And let me just tell you one more thing. I have heard recently that there are some people who are unscrupulous enough and wicked and evil enough to not only take somebody's identity paperwork, take their information, take photographs, so many things that they've taken, and propagate all kinds of stories and claim to be that person so that they can then walk literally in your shoes. If they may even take your shoes too. I have heard that there are people who are so terrible and have so much power and money, but they seem to be lacking a little sense. I don't know what the point is, but there are people who will declare that I or you or whoever it is that they have found this, that they're dead already. I've heard this. I've heard rumors, all kinds of things happen, that people are actually dead on paper already. That they have actually got some kind of fraudulent, because they can defraud. They can produce all kinds of fraudulent paperwork. I've seen fraudulent court orders and all kinds of things in my small experience. There are people who will get death certificates with your name on it, with my name on it, with whoever they want name on it, so that they can take away your inheritance. This is something I'm going through right now with having lost one of my parents and other family members. There are people who are that unscrupulous and that lazy, in my opinion, right? That they will take it upon themselves to use whatever powers they have. It might not be here in the UK. There's a lot of fraud and corruption here, but they may even do it overseas in another territory where you haven't been to yet, where you wouldn't even. There's 200 and how many countries in this world? There are people who have connections in whatever country. I'm not going to name any names. It could be as far away. Well, I will name one. It could be as far away as Australia or New Zealand, the other side of the world, as far as possible from where you are. And they claim that you traveled there. They have documents, all kinds of things. They go and they're willing to make a statement, a crime reference, a police report. Next thing you know, these people are dastardly enough to go into court, coroner's office, wherever they have to go to get whatever paperwork, because they're used to lying. That's what they live off of. Fraud and lies and deceit is the name of their game. And they're willing to do all these things and declare you're dead already. And that is why I now am having to fight for my rights, because what they quote unquote are doing when they do that is taking away your right to live. So even if they haven't taken away your physical life, this is why we need to be so much more aware of the type of crime and criminals that we're dealing with. Even if we are still physically alive, even if we don't have any physical evidence, somebody can literally take away your life and take away your rights on paper, because they've already been into court. As far as they're concerned, they've gone ahead of you and gone into court and got a court order in your name. And what I noticed recently, and this is a very important point that I need to make on this video today, God bless me for still being here and being cognizant enough to be able to remember what it is I'm trying to speak about without any script, without any direction, without any editing. I'm making this video. When I went to court recently, and I have not had so many experiences, but in my few experiences of going to court for civil matters, mostly, I have never been asked in the court to identify myself by providing the court. In a court, I have never been asked to validify, I can't even say the word, to verify a valid ID in court. When they call your name in court, they just assume, again, based on where the law is founded, in a very, historical time when people were mostly known or know each other or be able to verify each other just on sight. We're living in a time where there are millions of people, billions of people in this earth. We can't be using these outdated procedures. You go to court, they call your name, you present yourself. You may or may not, depending on what type of case it is, be asked to swear, to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing, to swear on the Bible if you believe in the Bible, or whichever manner you swear in. And that's it. It's taken for granted that people speak the truth. There needs to be proper verification of people's ID in every single courthouse, in every single court proceeding. Because how do you know that there are not people who are brave enough to come into court and perjure themselves and lie? When was the last time you heard of anybody being punished or being charged for perjury recently? Like, come on. Do I, Miss May, simple, not so academically qualified Miss May, have to be the one to be pointing these things out so that people will realize that it's time some of you got your head out of the sand and realize what is going on? Because if it can happen to me, it can happen to you too. You may think that you're above these things, you're elitist, you're superior, you're so much more important that it can never happen to you. Don't, as they say, never say never. Never say never. You don't know. And it may not even be you, but it may still happen to someone close enough to you for it to matter to you enough for you to suddenly realize that it didn't make sense for you to be living in this delusional state all of these years, not being concerned about what was happening around you, not realizing that we all have a part to play in the grand scheme of things, not realizing that we all have a voice and it's important that we use it for what is important and not to talk about people's hairstyle. And yes, I have an interest in fashion, but I'm not overly obsessed with things that are superficial and not of serious importance. As much as I like art and I like fashion and I've been in music, arts, and entertainment all of my life, it has its place. And music can be used as a great powerful force to spread messages and to inform and give people information. But I find a lot of the time some people are not quite certain about how to discern the difference between the truth and the lies, the real and the fake within the music industry. So sometimes it's hit or miss, if you excuse the pun. Not every song is a hit. However, there are so many mediums and so many ways of communicating things. If you're not able to communicate something directly, there's so many ways that you can voice your concerns. There's so many ways that you can use that power. And so many people have so much more power than me. And the only thing that I seem to see most of them interested in is hype and showing off to everybody else about how superior they are. But if you are that superior, with great power comes great responsibility. Are you using your power and your position to do something, to challenge things so that things can improve? Are you doing anything for the greater good? This is Miss May, Diary of Identity Theft Survivor. I don't apologize to those people. If you're still listening and you didn't want to hear what I was saying, then you should have turned off already. And for all those who are genuinely supporting the greater good and genuinely supporting the truth, I am so thankful to you. I pray that I will continue to be here and that my next update will not be too long from now. However, sometimes I do go on a little bit longer than I had intended to, because there really is so many things that need to be spoken about. And I look forward to the day when we can reason and have some more of an exchange, a debate. I look forward to the day when people will feel comfortable enough within themselves to express themselves more freely and to comment, and we can start to put our heads together, because as they say, two heads is better than one, and I alone cannot do so much. So I look forward to that day, and I pray and I hope that I will still be here. And until then, I pray and I hope that the people who are in a higher position in authority challenge those things that need to be challenged so that we can change these laws so that we can all live a more secure life.